Hey, good morning and welcome to Breakthrough Walls. I'm Ken Walls and I'm your host. And today I have the one and only Mr. Pat Hazell on the show. Stay with us. This is going to be fun. You're going to want to hear this one. And we are back. Let me go ahead and bring Pat on. Pat, welcome to the show.
Hey, good to be here.
It's great to have you here, man. We've been talking about this for quite some time, and I finally got you here, man. So, first, let me allow you the opportunity to plug your new podcast. I'll give you full screen so people can see that. What a gorgeous logo graphic you have there. I love it.
Thank you. It's an Anyvu. So, anybody who knows that brand made this nice backdrop for me.
Yeah.
Creativity and Captivity is a very simple thing. It's an audio only podcast, which I'm very proud of. And I was able to start having creative conversations with some of A-list folks that are directors and actors and singers, songwriters, just about anything that somebody has a passion for that's creative. I've talked to aerialists and ventriloquists, and it's really interesting. But to me, the power is in the creative process, not what they do, not their resume, but how and why they do it. And I was very, very lucky over the last several months to talk to the chief creative officer of Pixar and Frank Oz's next week's episode. So actually drops on Thursday. So we're talking about people who have been through a lot of, looked at the world through a lot of different lenses. And I feel like I'm super lucky to be sitting in the seat of curiosity, I call it. And that I've worked with many of them as a creative consultant or in some project sense, where we're usually able to start it from a very informal insider point of view.
Sure.
And I just felt like I was doing this on the phone anyway. If my clients would allow me to capture the conversation, then people could see what it was like to be at a coffee shop with a film director or a producer or an animator. And I don't know that I would have done it if there wasn't a pandemic, because I wouldn't have had the time, and then the guests wouldn't have had the time. But everybody was sort of eager to talk about something more hopeful. And the first several episodes, there's 4 up already. We're getting really great comments about it, and people are really, the ahas and the sort of golden nuggets are worthwhile. So I appreciate you amplifying the voice of it.
What's interesting is I have 370 episodes or something like that, and I don't listen to podcasts. I'm terrible. I'm a terrible podcast listener. It primarily because I sit here and I work in my office and I'm off and on the phone all day, and I don't drive anywhere. Right. And so when I do, I'll but I'm gonna make a concerted effort to listen to some of yours. So
give the first one a listen. Really give the one with Pete Docter, because he's running Pixar right now. And he made the movie Up, and he made the movie Inside Out. I mean, he wrote and directed. He did Soul, which just got an Oscar. So what's behind those movies is writing stories that make people care. And really, there's some core things that he shares about that is absolutely transferable. Like, to me, it's not a chit chat show about, willy-nilly things.
Right.
It's like, oh, look, the Creativity and Captivity was not named about being stuck in the pandemic. It was about getting a creative person to hold an audience captive for an hour. And if I had that hour, I didn't want to waste it. So, I just talked to Pink's aerialist choreographer that does all that stuff she does, flying over rock concerts and on award shows. She tells us a little bit about the fear of flying and what happens when you have your first fall. And all of that is completely usable, even if you're in a business sense.
Yeah.
But what happens when you have an epic fail? So it's, to me, it feels really, I feel really lucky.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I can't wait to start. I'll listen to the first episode today. But so Pat, I started this show it's been a little over 3 years ago. Jen Gittimer was actually my very first guest. And then Jeffrey was like the 4th or 5th guest. He was busier than her at the time. And so, I started this to help the average person have a breakthrough in life. And, I've interviewed so many celebrities and entrepreneurs and people that have been through the muck and got unstuck. And I did not intentionally rhyme that. But
I think you did. I think you poorly intentionally rhymed that, but
right. But I know, your resume is absolutely, I mean, Seinfeld. I mean, come on, man, that's doesn't get any bigger than Seinfeld. That's huge. And you've accomplished some amazing things in life. And so I'm excited to hear your life story. Why don't you start out, if you would, just talk a little bit about where you were born and raised, where it all started for you.
Well, where I was born wasn't significant, but that was in Passaic, New Jersey. I don't know anything about it. I was only there a couple of years when Dad was in college, but my formative years were really in Omaha, Nebraska. So it was a Midwestern place, which, your whole life is about, how do I escape this place? It's a beautiful town and there's a lot of cool things going there, but that's what part of your childhood is. When do you get a bike and you get to go explore other things besides your family? So
right.
I had some wanderlust to see the world. And what I chose to do to make it happen was I learned magic tricks. I learned card tricks. I street performed. I did all kinds. I taught myself to juggle. And that allowed me to go other places. It allowed me to go to San Francisco and to Denver and Chicago and New York. And I got a little taste of all those cities. And what was interesting about it was I didn't have a particularly great magic act or a great juggling act. I had a good skill set in a lot of different areas, but primarily I had a sense of humor, which meant I could save any tricks that went bad or anything. So I started to lean on my insurance policy. And when I got to the age where I moved from Omaha to Los Angeles, I decided to leave the props behind for the most part, try to just use humor and stand-up comedy and writing as my tools of the trade. And of course, being from Nebraska, the number one goal was to be on the Johnny Carson show, because Johnny had grown up in Nebraska. He had magic in his background. He was the biggest show you could be on.
Yeah.
So I was lucky enough to do his show prior to his departure in the final years.
Oh my gosh.
And that was the big, for a comedian, that's your Olympic gold medal, is to get Johnny to give you that okay sign.
How in the, so, I mean, so Jay Leno did Carson's show, right? And how did Leno beat you out at taking over for Carson?
Well, he was a few graduating classes ahead of me, among other things, right? I literally always referred to it that way. When I went to LA, I went, oh, okay. So Jerry Seinfeld and Jay Leno and Bill Maher, and there were guys that were at one, they were the seniors, right?
Yeah.
And then there were juniors, and then there was sophomore. Like I came in as a freshman when everybody was breaking. And so I became a mechanic in Jerry's shop working on his show. But I learned a lot, right from the beginning. It was working with him and Larry David and many other really interesting comedy writers. And I just felt really blessed to be riding in the sidecar and seeing how it worked, because I was pretty young when I first went out and headlined comedy clubs. And in Denver, Roseanne was an opening act for me when I think I was 20 years old. And
she was an opening act for you?
Yeah.
But awesome.
Yeah. Wow. She was married to a guy who worked at the post office, and she was a domestic housewife, but she was very funny. And then she went off to LA, hit it big at the Comedy Store, subsequently got a TV show. And many of those Denver comics who were good writers at the time migrated there and were writers on her show. And, so watching that happen to anybody, talk about breaking through walls to, whether or not you like her sense of humor or her show, that's really not the point, right? People have ebbs and waves in their careers, but at that time, going from being a monologist to be a sitcom star to being somebody who everybody recognized, part of that is mindset, I think.
Yeah, sure. I personally love her style.
Yeah,
well, she had my life,
and that's the thing. She had a very strong voice, and I always say to people in any business, but particularly when you're trying to express yourself as a comedian or a songwriter, you have to have an original voice and point of view. If you're derivative, you're never going to hit that really big peak of being unique. If you're a person on American Idol or any of these shows where you can hit the notes, that's one thing. That just makes you a sort of a good technical singer. Right. But if you have a voice, if you have a nuance, if you have a special tone or a way to adapt a song to your ability to sell it, that makes all the difference. That original aspect of it is, it's being willing to not look at everything around you. Whenever somebody says, I'm as good as they are, it's like, yeah, but you need to be better. You need to be bulletproof. Right. When somebody picks up your book, it has to read as a message to the world that needs to be told, not another book. The amount of books I have on my bookshelf that are as good as another book, they're everywhere. And that isn't to say that talent isn't important, but I think the idea of bringing an original voice to something changes everything.
It's what Lisa Patrick's saying, that you got to have a distinction factor. That's what you're talking about.
Hallelujah, Lisa Patrick. Yeah. I like your last name. She already knows success. Start with Patrick and everything. It's all up from there.
And it'll all just fall right in line for you.
My mom, by the way, I grew up with the name Patrick, right? And because I was doing magic tricks, my mom had the notion that my stage name should be P.A. Trick. And I was like, Mom, that sounds like a urology joke, like I'm not doing that.
That's pretty creative though. So talk about I'm curious, because I'm from the Midwest. I'm in Ohio. I'm still trying to figure out how to escape. But in growing up in the Midwest, it's how do I say this? When you're from a small town in the Midwest, in Omaha, although it's a good sized town, it's still a small town. How did here you are in high school and you're doing magic tricks and comedy in high school. How did people, and did you have the thoughts like, I'm going to LA, you guys? So
no, actually, at that time, to be honest, like anything a kid does, if they're a great musician or anything, I was a bit of a show off because I learned these card tricks that had a secret, right? So right. I was a super nerd. Like I had stringy hair that was parted on the side, and you wouldn't want to be around me. But what made me fit into all the groups was that they wanted to show their friends. They're like, oh, come do that trick for my friend. Oh, have them pick a card. Oh, and I started with another guy who was another comedy nerd, and I learned a magic trick where you could disappear a coin in your hands, right? It's called the French drop, and I got really good at it. So what was funny was that Mike, who taught me the thing, and I got better at it really quickly, he would stand behind the person, and I would make the coin disappear. And in the process, I would toss it to him, and he would take the money and go buy lunch or milk or something, right? So he and I literally got our lunch money every day by doing this coin trick over and over to people. And that was almost like we were street survivors, which we didn't have to be as middle-class kids in the middle of Omaha. But my mom packed me a sack lunch, and I like my mom. I love her,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I didn't like having the same sandwich and apple and something every day. So we literally had to find our own way to pay for our lunch. So that becomes a product of how you, why you do it is for attention, usually when you start in some way. So I sent away to magic catalogs and got new tricks and got things that got sent from Chicago from a place called Magic Inc. and a place in New York called Louis Tannen's Magic Catalog. And I would just go through there. Oh, throw a ball of fire out of your lunch sack. I think most of them were a terrible ripoff. They would come and you're like, what? There's a picture, there's a drawing of an animated Merlin throwing a ball of fire out into the sky. And it was like a cotton ball soaked in, kerosene that was sitting in a plastic bag inside your lunch sack, and you had to strike a kitchen match. It was never going to happen. But the fantasy of that was very much childhood whimsy and wonder. Yeah. And I will say this, and this really applies to your Breakthrough Walls philosophy.
Yeah.
What magic taught me more than anything is that everything is possible. Because in other professions and in other ideas, everyone's always playing devil's advocate of why you can't do something. Right. They're saying, I don't have the money. In magic, you already presume that it's possible. Okay, I'm going to float the lady. Oh, I'm going to saw a person in half. Like, it's ridiculous that you start from a presumption that, yes, okay, I'm going to float a person. Now, what method am I going to use? You just say, oh, are we going to do hydraulics or a sawhorse or a thing or whatever? You just start searching for, well, strings would show. Oh, this would happen. Oh, helium underwear isn't a thing. Whatever you think. But it is about starting from possibility. And I believe the same. The same it works with writing a book. And in fact, the book that I'm currently writing, which I all my life said, oh, I'll write a book, which I didn't do. I let all kinds of things get in the way. Yeah. Was that we question, what do we have to say that anybody will read? Like, why does it matter that I'm writing? Like, you're using a sort of self-sabotaging method to procrastinate.
Yeah.
So I think that whether it's a book or a movie or a sitcom or anything that you do, you have to understand that many idiots have done this before you. Like, it's my approach is about like cliff diving. People don't talk about cliff diving, right? They cliff dive. If you don't jump off the cliff, you're not a cliff diver, right? And if you survive, then you're a cliff diver. But if you don't, you're not, right? But I think the thing is taking that leap of faith and having some passion and purpose and putting everything into it is ultimately the journey that you want to be on. So my book is actually got a subtitle of A Procrastinator's Guide to Writing a Book, BOO, right? I don't finish the word. What are people writing here?
Bradley says bazooka bubblegum magic tricks were the best. I remember them too. Oh my God.
Also, those jokes. I used to read those little jokes in there too.
I'm sitting here thinking about if you took a kerosene fireball to school today, the FBI would show up.
There's so many things. You can hardly take a sharpened pencil to school, right?
I know.
I mean, why would you even do that? You've got your calculator on your iPhone. I think about what we had to do to cheat at a math thing is,
oh my God.
You remember you had a peachy folder? You remember that thing you could open up and there was a little chart up in the back corner, and it only went to 144. So if it was more than 12 times 12, you were screwed.
Oh my God. I remember that. Holy crap.
But that was that's where I learned how to draw, because on the outside of that were these athletes playing tennis and shooting basketball, and you would doodle and you would make those people do some crazy thing. And, and
Bruce Jenner was on the front of Wheaties.
Yeah, you're right.
when he was still Bruce Jenner.
That's right.
And
Pluto was still a planet at that time. Now Pluto has gone to being not a planet, to being a dwarf planet, to being whatever. Like even my education is not even relevant.
I know. It's like all of that stuff I learned is useless now. Thanks.
And my kids, by the way, I don't know how I became the guy that when I used to ask my mom how to spell something, she'd say, look it up, right?
Yeah.
And I would have to go dutifully look it up. And it was always some weird word where, it didn't sound the way, you couldn't even find the word, right? She'd say, all words aren't spelled phonetically. And I said, what do you mean by that? And she'd say, look that up. But, I'd go through the F's and there's no phonetically, right? So, but I grew up as a kid who had to look things up. Now I have kids of my own, and I'm the guy where my kids say, Google it, Dad. Like, I get no help in entire life,
Did you have the Encyclopedia Britannica?
Of course we did.
I mean, do you remember the salesman that came and sold your mom and dad? And I remember it, man. I was like, oh my God, we're going to freaking have the world's knowledge sitting on our shelves, and tests and school reports are going to be easier. And, and
I remember I would take like the M encyclopedia into the bathroom, right? When I'd go to the bathroom, and I was like, oh, there's a lot of interesting M things or whatever. But here's the funny thing. It's still on my mom's shelf now.
Oh my
and
God.
Nothing in it is relevant. It's like the countries in Russia have changed. It's like, oh, Prussia, let's read about that. No, it's not around anymore, Mom. Like get rid of that. And she doesn't really understand that Google has sort of replaced that, But the greatest pages were the anatomy pages where they were transparent. Like you could see the workings of the body.
Oh my God, that's so funny. And now I have the Alexa sitting here on my desk that anything I want to know, she turns my lights off and on for me. So anyway,
you ever have a situation where Alexa and Siri argue and you're left in the lurch?
Not yet, thank God.
Yeah.
Thank God. So at what point, so you were in high school, you get out of high school, did you end up going to college?
I did. I always say for 90 days, same as cash, because I grew up with a comedy group in high school. We were literally high school seniors and everybody was kind of a screw off, but we harnessed that energy by creating this. It was more of a comedy fraternity. It was called Tri Kappa Stooge, which was like a nod to the Three Stooges. Now, we didn't do physical, wacky stuff, but we did sketches and, we were like, can we do the entire Wizard of Oz in under 5 minutes or whatever? Like we would do all the highlights and so forth. So we were very young. We were just out of high school when we were able to go to a comedy club, and we went, it was one day a week on Sundays, and it was a bar. So we couldn't go in the front door. They would let us in through the stock room. Onto stage, we do our routine and we go out the stock room, which of course is full of liquor, but they weren't thinking, but we made $5 or something. But what we got was a forum. Every Sunday night, we got a place to do new sketches. So all week we'd go, oh, let's do a prison, yard sketch. Oh, let's do a, whatever it was. We would come up with some ideas. And part of that was because Saturday Night Live had come into focus, and we were all like, we could do something like that, couldn't we? And again, it was most of those people have gone on to other things as comics or writers or acting professors. And I consider that early Algonquin Roundtable in Omaha to have been something that made us compete with each other, to come up with new ideas, to bring something to the table. And that's really how we began to create. Was, what do you have? What ideas do you have? This friend of mine, Mike, who I've mentioned before, he wasn't really a writer or a magician or whatever, but I needed an Ed McMahon, right? I needed a sidekick. So we did it early on. We did an act called Pat and Mike, a romantic comedy, and Mike did nothing. Mike just stood at a mic and commented on my act. And then I would, make fun of him and he would make fun of me. And people loved that relationship. And that's when I understood how to write in dialogue, which was different than writing in a monologue.
So you, I mean, didn't you feel silly? I mean, getting up on stage in a bar and
not really. I don't think silly. I really felt liberated because I feel like what's interesting to me about any kind of expression, and for your audience, we're probably talking to people that are speakers or experts in some
Yeah.
field or a book author or whatever.
Yeah.
It's about expression. How did they write that book? They had a story to tell. They had something to say, right?
Yeah.
So a songbird doesn't sing because it has a song. It has something to express, right? It's the morning, the sun's coming out, something, right? And it happens to do it in a way that's very attractive and makes us feel good and so forth. But it's communicating to the other birds and the animals and to itself. So in many ways, I liked working on magic tricks because they were riddles to solve. They were something to figure out. And then the idea of keeping a secret was really to protect what it was I was doing, because I could do it for longer. I could do it for more people if I didn't spoil it, if I didn't tell people about it. Wow. But anyway, I feel like that was silly wasn't, my concern.
It would have been mine.
Yeah.
I'm projecting my feelings on. So I can't imagine getting on stage and, I mean, I think I'm funny sometimes. I can't imagine getting on stage and really trying to make people laugh for a living. I can't even fathom that.
Well, there's two things. There's a risk to reward, chart.
Yeah.
And the risk feels big till you start getting the laughs. The reward becomes greater than the risk. Like I've done things, tremendously unfunny things, thinking they might be funny. But in fact, when Mike and I used to do that early act, I would go, this would be great, Mike. You get a couple of beer mugs and we'll tie them on a string and you wear them around your neck and you come out and you're a little embarrassed. And then I tell everybody Mike's embarrassed about his new glasses. And, it was stupid. It was really terrible. But it's like, come on, they don't look that bad, whatever. And I just tried to sell this bit. And we still laugh about it after the fact that we thought this was going to be the most hilarious, like Steve Martin moment of all times. But the thing is, it is about taking the jump. You take that leap. And to put it in some business term, hey, Doug Wing.
There's Doug.
That's the ladder guy. Everybody knows that.
I love Doug.
I think it's ironic, the name Wing and the ladders. Like people aren't going up then jumping off like Superman with the Wing family behind that invention. Oh
my God.
Yeah, no, I feel like the risk is what it's all about in just about everything you take. So when Warren Buffett invests in something, he's not taking a risk. It feels like it is, but he does his research and he looks into a company and he finds out who's managing it. And so for him, putting a bunch of money into a thing, it's not as much of a gamble as it is if you know nothing. If you're just have fear of something, but if you're willing to do research and think about it and plug into something, you're making an early investment. And I think the same came with writing and so forth. You're not going to write everything. It's going to be great, but it's yours to own. You can edit it later. You can rewrite it. You can do, but if you don't ever put that clay on the potting wheel, you'll never know if you're going to make a lamp or a vase or an ashtray. Right. And I think people get afraid creatively that their perfection sets in, or what are people going to think of me? And that's the wrong hat to wear when you start developing content. You got to.
I totally agree. Totally agree. What is so you were in college for 1 quarter, is that right? Or
it was a year and a half.
Oh, okay. And so you were maybe 19 and
19, 20 something. And I got to tell you,
where did it go from there?
Well, it wasn't that I wasn't interested in being educated, but it wasn't fun. And I had some classes, like I had a political science class, and why I don't know, like wasn't my interest, but it was sort of, they tell you have to take these things and so forth. And I remember in that I had a very unfair situation, which was the professor had written the textbook that we were working from. So you talk about not being able to copy your book report, like the dude's going to know if you're using his words in your thing. So I didn't take any interest in the book. So we had one of these, I don't know what those tests are called, but it was where you have to write one answer, like the whole half hour. It's like an essay response to one question. and he wrote something about boundary waters, about, apparently there's a place, international boundary waters, where when a ship goes out past a certain point and so forth. I have no idea anything about it. All I know is I spent the half hour writing a comic essay about what happens when the fish crosses the boundary water. Is it the country of origin, or is the person that catches the fish?
Oh
do
my
they get their, whatever. So I went on and on because I didn't really have any idea. So I just thought, well, I'll write a monologue. So I did that. The guy comes back the next day to pass the tests out, and it's one of those, not Goodwill Hunting, but one of those moments where the teacher's got to make an example of me, right?
Oh,
so
God.
People get their tests back, and they were blue books, right? It was written on a.
Oh, I lost your audio. Something happened. That's crazy. It just completely went out. Wow, it was perfect. Maybe refresh the page real fast. It'll kick you out, but you can come right back in. Yeah, I can't. I lost you. Refresh the browser page real fast. See if that helps. Can you hear me? Uh-oh. I can't hear you. I have no idea what you're saying. You can't hear me? That is crazy. I don't know what just happened. Well, that was actually going really well. I don't know what just happened with the audio there. Can you guys still hear me? Those of you that are still watching, can you hear me okay? Can just let me know if you can hear me still. Oh, okay, Doug. Thank you. Thank you. I don't know what happened there. And I don't know. I couldn't hear what he was saying, so I don't know if he's coming back. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
That was crazy. I mean, it was just like you were talking and it was gone.
I have a filter. When my stories get too good, it shuts down. I find it's a funny filter, and it says save this for the show. Don't give this away for Ken Walls. He's already breaking walls down.
Oh,
I want to be on the glass ceiling show is what I want to be on. I did see while I was gone there, Lisa Patrick sent a compliment about the podcast. And again, if there's any kind of hard sell on this show, it is only to give it a try, right?
Sure.
It's on all the platforms that the kids are listening to. And even though, Ken, I love when you said, I'm not a podcast person. Neighbors have said that to me as if I was selling drugs. They're like, oh, I don't do podcasts. I go, well, it's just a thing you can listen to in your car. No. It's like if they get hooked on it, it may become a problem, and then they're going to lose their family and their job, go down that podcast black rabbit hole, right?
Don't need my car repossessed because I listen to your podcast.
Yeah, exactly. That they're coming after you. No, but it is interesting that what I learned about it is that it is a medium that people do listen to on commuting, but they also listen to it when they exercise, whether they're biking or,
my wife. That's my wife.
I like how she has to communicate with you through this. She can't talk to you in the house.
It's the only time we talk is when I'm on my show.
Well, Jill, it's called Creativity in Captivity. Sure. And that's the commercial right there.
Yeah, there it is.
But it's on Pandora and Audible and Google and Apple and so forth. And we are blessed with quite a few snappy reviews on Apple. So if you don't trust me to tell you about my thing, Kind of like when my mom used to say, taste this. I think it's spoiled. You know,
What?
why would you do that, Mom? That if you already think the milk is bad, why would you put it in my mouth?
That's what the
You never had anybody do that?
yes.
It's brutal. It's brutal.
I know.
It's like, I don't mind making you my poison tester. But anyway, it is really, really an interesting, fun thing. And it's very candid and informal. There it is. Thank you.
Yes.
Kellen Ann.
Kellen.
She
Kellen,
sent me
Bob.
a beautiful card that she had recreated this logo and cut it all the different colors out.
Dude, I have it right down there. I have one of her. She's awesome. I love Kellen. She's amazing.
Yep.
Plus, I have another one up here that my wife bought for me for Christmas from her. So,
by the way, kudos to you. I saw your Father's Day pictures or something. I don't know if you posted it or Jill posted it, but your daughter looks like she's thriving from the kind of parenting you're providing, which also takes a lot of creativity.
She's incredibly creative, especially when she wants something.
Yes.
and you know what I and that actually is a great segue into what we were talking about, because you know, I think that becoming a successful entrepreneur, it does require that childlike mind, a lot of adults lose that and they get too damn serious about life, and you know, I just think that that's required to really do something and have fun.
Right. But school teaches us to take the play out of our life. I'm not against the education system, but when they say get serious or do this or learn these, I see that. Here's the short end. I will wrap up the Blue Book story, Kellen. Thank you for the request. This is the all request weekend. Is the caller there? Yes. Oh, Blue Book punchline. What happened was this guy drops everybody's grades in front of him, everybody who got a passing grade, and then he holds mine back. And he said, somebody here didn't take this assignment seriously, and I don't appreciate it. And I'm going to ask that person to come to the front of the room and read their response, which was the absolutely wrong thing for this guy to do. Because now, not only did I waste time writing it, I get to deliver the monologue to the class. And I begin to say that do the stuff about the fish and its family and so forth. And I mentioned, you know, the unknown soldier, and I do all kinds of, and they're laughing. And he now knows he's made a fatal mistake of giving me the classroom. So he cuts me off in the middle of the thing and says, go outside, sit in the hallway until it's over, and then we're going to talk about this. And I'm like, why? It's going great. But anyway, it was definitely a.
Oh my God, that is so funny.
Yes, but that now let me just wrap back into what we were talking about, kids and your daughter, because one of the things that kids do that is a very important thing to hang on to is that from when kids are little babies, when they want something, they make it known. I want a cookie. Give me cookie. They just don't stop.
They don't.
Now, I'm not saying be persistent as a business person. Don't buy my stuff. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is there's clarity in what you're after. Yeah. I want a cookie. And then what do I have to do? Pull drawers out to climb to the counter to get to the cookie jar. Like, you proceed to find it. But when you get a little bit older, college and a little after, everything is framed in I don't want. What do you want on your pizza? Anything but anchovies. Anything but olives, anything. You're not any closer to getting a pizza that you want. You're getting all of the things you don't want on a list. And I feel like that's one of the great problems is when people then start talking about a job. Well, I'll tell you what, anything but food service. I'm not going to bartend. They're making a list of things they won't do, and it puts them no closer. But when I started in anything that I did, if I was going to write a play or whatever, I always started with a declarative sentence. I'm going to write a play by Christmas, or I'm going to learn to juggle 5 by my birthday, or I'm going to whatever, right? And therefore, you're setting goals that are dreams with a deadline. because that becomes a very important part of the process, is not just say someday I'm gonna, right?
Yeah.
Someday
Yeah.
I'm gonna is nothing. But if
Yeah.
you're, and it doesn't matter if you have to change it. It's like a budget, if you miss the deadline and you have to work a little harder. But when you start to make a time budget for yourself, how am I going to achieve that by Friday or by December or by the time I'm 50? You begin to start to see, oh, I have to put increments of time together to accomplish my goal. And
Yeah.
it changes everything when you make a commitment to something. You keep looking at like, well, someday, like somehow the lottery, somebody's going to knock on your door and say, hey, we need a screenplay right away. No, they're not going to do that.
No. No.
So
you ended up, and Lisa Patrick says she's got Pat Hazell on her slice of pizza. So
that's interesting. Did I autograph some pizza for you at one time?
So you ended up a year and a half into college. You leave. Is that when you were like, I'm going to LA? I mean, how did that happen?
Here's what happened. I was dabbling in stage time in other places, again, with a comedy magic act that was fairly polished. So what was interesting about having the tricks was I had a routine. It didn't matter how the comedy went. At the end, if I found their card or if I restored the piece of rope, it really gave me some structure to live within. Yeah. And so then I would stack up my rope trick and my card trick and the trick with the bra and the trick with the something, right? I had all this stuff.
Right.
And that gave me an act. And once I had an act, I was able to be an opening act for people. And I started getting calls when I was in Omaha. I would get a call to come to Des Moines, to open for Sheena Easton or to open for Paul Revere and the Raiders or, somebody. So whoever there was somebody, right? So what was funny was Rodney Dangerfield came to Omaha and they had a contest to have an opening act. And there was a guy who was already an opening act who was not supposed to be there, but he showed up. So they let me open for the guy who opened for Rodney Dangerfield.
Wow.
Yeah. And I got a taste of that idea and I thought, wait, this is where my education needs to be. I need to do as much of this as I can. So I began to go to conferences, magic conventions, juggling conventions, there's a sub thing for everything. And I would go and my basic trick was if I went to a juggling convention and I wasn't a good enough juggler, I would be the magician at the jugglers convention. And if I was at a magic convention, I would juggle and tell jokes, right? Like I was always sort of the one flavor they needed on their show that wasn't like 100 magicians and so forth. So I got to learn a little bit about a lot of different ancillary arts.
Did you have an agent or were you just like?
No, I will say this. I was my own agent of not wanting to do hard labor. And so like one time in high school, I helped these people were putting in a tennis court behind their house on a hill. And so they couldn't get the cement truck back there. So we carried buckets of cement down the stairs and poured them on this, whatever, for a full day until my arm sockets and everything. And I was like, I'm never in my lifetime going to work this hard. I got to figure out how to get out of this. It was the Tom Sawyer School of Education. I've got to find a different thing to do.
Right.
So I went about doing all of this other stuff. And one of the things that I came up with when I was in Omaha was doing card tricks table to table in restaurants, sort of at the happy hour or to turn the tables over. And I worked at the Spaghetti Works. I went in and convinced them. The first thing is I said, I'll do the first night for free. You can see how it goes, sort of thing. And I went from table to table. They got a good response. So I was able to then work every Thursday for years at that Spaghetti Works. And they paid me an hourly rate, which was pretty pleasant, but also I got a pile of tips and I would do tricks. I did a trick with a $1 bill that I borrowed from the person or a $5 or something. And I would make it fly around the restaurant and they would go, really? And I would go, yeah. And I would fold some quarters into it and I would throw it up in the air and it would stick to the ceiling, which was like 30 feet up. And I'd go, Anyway, when you look up, there were hundreds of dollars stuck on the ceiling.
Oh my!
And it was a great piece of advertising because even when I wasn't there, people would go, "Why is all that money on the ceiling?" They go, "Well, you have to talk to the guy on Thursday," and they would come back And
Oh
they didn't know it was their money. And then once a month I'd come and the janitor and I would scrape all the money off the ceiling and I'd give him his percentage, you know.
Oh my
That's
God.
when I could have used the Doug Wing ladder. I was a little late. I could have used that a long time ago.
Oh my gosh. But see, that's creative. That's what people need to listen to, that, because you got really creative in your, but the desire, right? Napoleon Hill talks about the desire. Your desire was there to do something with this whole magic, and you started getting really creative to achieve that desire.
Well, that was the art part, and which important as an artist to have that.
Yeah.
But also the business part kicked in, which was once I was settled at the Spaghetti Works on Thursday, I felt, oh, this is a transferable piece of information. I went to Gallagher's and said, I'll do Fridays at your night at whatever. And I bumped it up $5 an hour and I got going there. So I was doing Friday at Gallagher's. Now, once I had two competing business folks, I was able later to say to the Spaghetti Works, well, I could work Gallagher's Thursdays and Fridays, unless you want to kind of bump it up a little, right, to stay here. Oh, no, we want to. And I would do that. And then I would go to a different restaurant on Thursday or on Saturday. Yeah. So I had 3 days a week where I was leveraging everybody. And then on Sunday, I'd go to the comedy club and I'd work out new material. Wow. So, you know, that was creating a forum, you know, a workout place for myself, because you do have to have stage time. You have to have a live audience. Practicing in front of a mirror, as you know, as a speaker or anything like that, you know, it's not graduation day. You really, you learn everything once you're talking to an audience. Yeah.
So you end up, at some point, I cannot believe we've been on here 46 minutes. Feels like 5 minutes. At some point, you ended up you start jumping around the country doing different comedy clubs, but you ended up in LA. I know, you know, you eventually ended up as, were you a senior writer on Seinfeld? Is that what you were?
Well, I don't know if you call anybody a senior writer, but I was on the early side of it. Larry, David, and Jerry wrote the pilot. And then I did come in as one of the original writers. Wow. With a partner named Matt Goldman. And he and I had written a play, which was our sample. We wrote a play called The Bunk Bed Brothers, which was about two brothers stuck in their childhood bedroom. You know, as adults, they had to spend the night. And it was just a all-night bull session full of jokes and tricks and Nerf basketball games and acting out sound effects records. Just a crazy showcase of our talent, essentially, that made no sense. But what it was as a spec script, it was an example of a lot of comedy per square inch. That particular script was sent to Castle Rock when Jerry and Larry were looking for supporting writers. And he and I got the first two jobs on the show. At that time, it was called the Seinfeld Chronicles before it went on the air. That was the original title. And I'll tell you what, I learned a lot in their presence, and they were learning as they went. Larry had some experience on Fridays and Saturday Night Live and so forth, but they had never really created a sitcom, and watching and learning really important things. For example, Jerry would say to me, you know, let's write to ourselves as the audience. We have to write a show that we would want to watch. Whether or not we want to be like these other shows on TV, what's going to keep our attention? Which was really important. It was about a point of view of who likes the kind of stuff we like. Try to find our niche audience, right? When I later wrote a sitcom of my own, he told me that your job is to lose sleep over. You have to have the idea that you're willing to lose sleep over, and work on it. Whether people at the network like it or don't like it, you have to be willing to do that, and also sink on your own ship. He said, you know, be the captain of that ship. Sail it with pride. If it goes into the water, you will not regret it. If you board somebody else's ship and you don't believe in it, if you don't think that show's going to be good and whatever, and it sinks, you'll hate yourself for having taken that journey. So those were really important words, you know, to sink on your own ship to me, because I thought, oh, okay, well, I'm into nostalgia. I like retro material. I like talking about growing up. I like talking about the Midwest and the holidays and road trips and, you know, the terrible Halloween costume. And all riding in the back of the Country Squire wagon, all of those kinds of things
Yeah.
to me, they're just life moments.
Yeah.
But I found that when I put them in a show called The Wonder Bread Years and started sharing it with the audience, that my own family slideshow was somewhat universal. It was something that you would see your family in, you would see your vacation in, you would see, and all of those stories aren't so far from the truth. And that became a really nice place to be authentic within my humor, as opposed to writing randomly about airplane food or whatever stuff I used to do on monologues on the Tonight Show. But observing things typically is what I learned from Jerry. Was in every situation that you do, when you learn to ride a horse, when you eat a hot piece of pizza, when you whatever, there's a story in it. There is something unique to the way you see it. And that also, then, it wasn't that I did things to get material. I just became conscious of my, what was I feeling at the time? What did it look like? What did it taste like? How did this happen? When I was engaged, I was in Hawaii, and I learned to ride a horse on the corner of a king size bed the night before. Like, she was an avid horse rider, and I didn't ride horses. She signed us up for some expert ride. I go, I don't even know how to get on a horse. So I sat on the corner of the bed holding a camera strap, bouncing, and I was like, this isn't a horse. Like, a horse is going to know I can't ride it, and to her,
what'd she say?
She thought it was, no, she's like, no, you need the basics. I'm like, and then I'll tell you what, the next day I was on a horse named Joe Montana that could neither run nor, throw. It was like, it knew. It went out in the middle of a pineapple field and scratched its belly, and I was like, what? Everyone else was like riding on the beach, and I was stuck in the middle of a pineapple field. But I have no regrets that the experience allowed me to see it through a comic lens. And I feel like that's all of my upbringing is that way. My commentary, you've been sort of following me a little bit on Facebook and other things, but I try to stay true to the moment of time. So during the pandemic, which was a little more, it wasn't appropriate to send pictures of a salad or make jokes about bookmarks or something. It was a little bit more about being present and being significant. Like, to me, that was the success of guiding my friends and folks through what I was seeing creatively. So,
and we're friends on Facebook. I don't know how long we've been friends now, for a little bit. And did you just say that the Wonder Bread Years that was your show?
Well, now you may be thinking The Wonder Years, which was the popular sitcom.
The Wonder Years. Didn't you say when I wrote my own sitcom?
Yeah. No, I wrote a sitcom called American Pie, which also was not the movie American Pie.
Oh.
But I'm really good at titles that sound like they were successful. The Wonder Bread Years was meant to be a nod to the Wonder Years.
Got it.
Right. But I'll tell you what, it is something that I still do at performing arts centers around the country. Like, I'm headed to Minnesota right after 4th of July to do 6 shows of the Wonder Bread Years. And it's a live 90-minute one-man show. And there are clips of it, I'm sure, on the YouTube, as the kids say. If you want to, get on your Google box or get on your BlackBerry or Blueberry or whatever the kids are using. This is how my mom talks. So I'm becoming my mom. But in fact, she said to me, I listened to the first 2 episodes of your Popcast, she said.
Go, Mom.
Yeah, she's good. That. She's also hilarious. I have to say, she doesn't know she's funny, but when I used to first go on morning radio shows and stuff to do interviews, I would go there. It'd be, daybreak essentially. And they would, callers would call to get tickets or something. And the guy goes, "Hey, we've got a caller." And it would be my mom. And she'd say, "Listen, when you're done with this thing, can you pick up some syrup? Because your dad's going to have pancake." I was like, "Mom, this isn't an intercom system. Like, this is supposed to be for people who are curious, want to win a ticket or something. Oh, you're too big to get syrup." I was like, and that would all be part of the show. I wouldn't be surprised if she figures out how to get on this show and ask
Oh,
for,
my God.
you know, some kind of, ham or
Well,
something.
you can tell your mom. I'll interview your mom someday. Hear her side of the story.
I don't know I don't see any of the chat stuff popping up that you might see, but I do want to thank the ones that have been early subscribers to the podcast, because it is
Yeah.
the little engine that could. We were busy getting it up. Somebody had a Torino station wagon.
Doug
That,
Wing. Yeah.
oh yeah. Did that
Yeah.
have the sort of faux wood paneling on the side? Kind of the wainscoting. Yeah.
That's so
Tragedy and
funny.
humor are different sides of the same coin. Yes. And they also say tragedy plus time equals comedy. So don't make fun of the Lincoln assassination while you're in the theater, right? Like that's the wrong time,
So, like, you mean like?
Oh yes, I love that.
other.
That's a good one. Wes Wyatt's funny. He says my movie Apocalypse Now and Then. Yes, that's all I do. Is I kind of give it the what's his name, the twist, right?
Yeah.
I change from beat it to eat it. That's all I need to do to make a big hit.
You're Weird Al.
Yeah, I'm
So,
Weird Al-ing it.
I don't know why, but I'm going back to I'm thinking about when we were kids, the Casey Kasem. Like, when you wanted to hear your favorite song, you had to wait. Like or go by the album and pray to God that your little brother didn't scratch the crap out of it. And, like, I mean, it was way different than is.
No,
today.
you totally had to be patient. In fact, I would say, I don't remember where I read it, probably a meme in the last week or something, but that you can't expect to plant the seed and eat the fruit on the same day.
Right.
Right. I don't know. It was something that I saw, but I thought, that is an interesting situation, which was, I feel like a lot of my creative endeavors came from being bored as a kid or looking for something to stimulate, so forth. So it wasn't something that I think that we are losing that moment where imagination comes to life because of having a phone that feeds us so much and we can stay busy. Like being bored in line at the DMV to get your picture taken had some value. You were thinking about things, right? Now you can totally get lost in your inbox, or you can do something. And you always have this fight or flight response that these texts need to be, oh, I've just got to get back to that. Oh, I got to do this. And so you're sort of on a treadmill of constant information. So imagine if your grandfather who once a day might walk to the mailbox to get his mail. Imagine if that mailbox was approaching him, like coming at him everywhere. That's what's happening, is that this just in, like,
it's nonstop.
Yeah. I mean, I've written with some musical folks where we've written songs or whatever. And I just say to them, here's the rule: phones off, turn them off. We'll look at them at 11 o'clock. We'll take a break. We'll check our text. But you can't just go, every so often, I'll just interrupt this creative flow with, whatever the gobbledygook is that people need. And especially when you add announcements from Twitter or Facebook or something, it's the killer of creativity is distractions.
It really is. I don't want to keep you all day here, but we can go over if you're okay with it. I don't know what your schedule's like.
Well, at the moment I'm good, so it's up to you. Is there are there any salient questions from folks that really
and by the way,
depends on it?
I should have told you this up front. If you look to the right of StreamYard up at the top, you'll see public comments or live comments up there. You can click on that and you can see all the comments.
Okay, good. I was on private chat.
Yeah.
I see. All right.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, because I know it hasn't been, all rainbows and unicorns for you. I mean, you end up in LA. I'm sure you were still fairly young when you got to LA. What do you think the number one thing is that holds people back in life from and the number one answer to this question is fear, by the way. So you have to do better. But holds people back from financial success, happiness, all of that.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I agree with you that fear is a big obstacle.
Yeah.
But you are the master of the fear. You are the warden that hangs that fear over yourself. So as much as I also psychologically, it's probably the number one answer that you are your own worst enemy. I think that it rings true for many different reasons, that I don't deserve this or I whatever, and some of that is projected upon us when parents or spouses or somebody doesn't approve or doesn't think you're doing it right or whatever. And we begin to buy into that. It's not necessary. It's a subversive thing. But also I think, I know people who are tremendously too, they give themselves credit for everything. I just pooped. It's a sculpture. It's like, no, it's not a sculpture. You know what I mean? Like, I wish I had the freedom to feel like everything I did was great, but I think that there's a balance between the two. And I think that giving yourself permission to do anything, to fail, to whatever, risk is equated to fear, right?
Yeah.
Because fear is about the unknown. And that's the thing about both success and failure, is what's going to happen to me if, right? How is that going to impact me? Maybe I don't want that. Maybe I'm not ready for this part of it, maybe whatever. But I don't know. I feel like going back to where we talked about finding your voice, that includes the idea that it's okay. Like, I don't have to be the prettiest person to be the most attractive, right? If your confidence is there, if you're smart intellectually, I wish in our society there was a way for people to see brains instead of beauty, right?
Yeah.
I think it's fantastic that people have advantages for different reasons and all that kind of privilege. And it is true, we don't go to the grocery store and pick out the bruised fruit as the first thing we want. But I think that when you start to find that it's the sweetest or this is the whatever, you begin to have relationships that are different. You have a deeper connection. What I am really trying to do with this podcast is offer value, have conversations with creative people that can tell us how to reduce that risk. How do we get rid of that fear? What do we do? Because it changes. We get a little bit older. Now we're afraid of aging, right? Or we're afraid of, putting on weight, or we're afraid of this kinds of, what does this mean? But I think fixing your core is a little bit about seeing that each time you take a little bit of a risk, you don't die. It doesn't kill you. And I feel like what I've learned the most over the last 20 years is not to worry about the industry's approval. If the Comedy Central people don't think I'm funny, that doesn't mean I'm not funny to the people that want to see my kind of show. Or maybe I'm not edgy enough, or I'm maybe not this. So whenever you try to be what they want, then you're not also being what you are, right? And that really makes an author, a speaker, all that authentic part of it is so important. And being in the backyard looking for 4-leaf clovers when opportunity knocks is a bad, situation. So I always say, move towards the epicenter of where your dreams are. If you want to do something and you're not good at it, get closer to it. Be in a circle of those people. Listen to that music. Read that book. Find out where the places are, because you'll find that in any subculture that when you hang around enough, when you're an intern at a thing, you're running the radio station, right? Yep. Because you're where you want to be. I mean, that's all it is, about proximity, because somebody always needs help with something. The next thing you know, you're driving them. They say, oh, I don't want to make coffee. Yeah, but you'll find out now you're in the room where the people are talking about how like Hamilton says, in the room where it happened. You have to be there. And then you can decide how much you want from that and how much you don't want from it, right? You get perspective.
Wow. Yeah. Here, Dennis says, I love this. It's what Milton Berle said. If opportunity doesn't knock, build a door.
No, that's a good one. I like that one, Dennis. Yeah, thank you.
That is so amazing, man. You spouted off about 14 things back to back that are tweetable, as Gittimer would say. That was really powerful. So
Well,
thank you.
I like to live in that vein, and again, I
Yeah.
try a little bit in the podcast to bring value out. I try not to ask people about the thing they do that we all know about. To me, if you
Yeah.
can Google it or find it on their website or Wikipedia it, then
Yeah.
it's not new. But if I say, when do you experience imposter syndrome to somebody who's a major success and they're willing to share it,
Yeah.
you go, oh, wait a minute. These people struggle with the same things I struggle with. So it's not so out of the normal. I mean, I feel
Yeah.
like that we as creators of content, we face different walls. Some
Yeah.
people have a fear of the blank page. Other people have boundless ideas, but they're afraid they're going to die without getting everything out of them, right? Like there's different versions of this.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think that, I just feel particularly lucky that people have been responding to being guests. Jerry Seinfeld did do this show a few weeks ago that'll come out, down the line.
Yeah.
But also his manager and executive producer, George Shapiro, who's 90, who represented Carl Reiner and Andy Kaufman and Jerry and so forth. He tells stories about what it's like to be a person that is supporting that kind of a person, right?
Right.
And we
had him on?
Yeah.
Wow.
He was great. Now, many of these are still, we've recorded them, but we haven't mastered them yet.
Yeah.
And I'm really discovering, you'll see a little bit of a pattern in it, that there are some famous A-list people, but in between them, there are people who are wildly creative and innovative and who are taking this risk every day, who have really valuable information to share.
Yeah.
And when I talk to Jay Johnson, the ventriloquist, you think, well, what is that conversation like for an hour? Well, we didn't talk about it in terms of being a ventriloquist. We talked about writing scenes with two characters.
Yeah.
And what is the dynamic? And he casts himself as both characters. And they're in a dialogue where they have conflicting emotion. And his body is doing one thing on one side, and he's concentrating on doing something on the other side, right? There's something about how to prioritize all of those miniature details. And it's that attention to detail that makes us think that the other person is real and that the argument is worthwhile. And right. And so there's something to me that a screenwriter can learn from that an actor can learn from that. Yeah. So, this guy at his core is a storyteller, and he's an extraordinary performer, and he's a humorist, and he's all of these different segments that happen to embody themselves into this one art form, which, when it first came out, when ventriloquism began in France, however many years ago, it was almost looked at as like some kind of Satan, to be able to make an object talk,
right.
He would have been burned at the stake, Right. So I don't know. I find that stuff.
That's amazing. Okay. Now I'm sold on your podcast. I'm definitely.
Well, I know you may end up with some scars, and it may,
I'm going to lose my house.
Pain. Yes. Yeah. Well, Jill, here's the thing. Jill, you and Jill can listen together, and then you'll only each lose half the house.
We'll definitely be listening to your podcast. And I'm trying to get the sign behind you in view there.
Oh,
Creativity in Captivity with Pat Hazell. Definitely go over to your favorite podcast platform and subscribe. Is there a website that I can?
Yes. We have a little advanced website called creativityincaptivity.fun, F-U-N. Because wow. Yes, because not because .com was taken. No, Ken, because .fun is a lot more fun.
That's pretty awesome.
But it's great. Right now, the first 5 episodes are outlined on there, and there's a listen button. But if they subscribe on Apple and they listen to a few episodes, if they have an inkling to write a review or to share it, this is definitely going to be one of those ones where you and I can look back to, where this is one of the very first public announcements of it, because I was so busy building it to start.
Yeah.
I wanted to get it right and to get it in place and to be dropping a new episode every Thursday. And now we're just starting to get the word out, but we didn't start any big publicity campaign. So as an example of how do you grow something from nothing, it's folks like you and Joe Soto and other folks that are, this is going to be a great example of, we didn't buy our way into it. It's going to be organic growth, and it's going to be, if your listeners today subscribe and like it, then it's going to unfold. And I'm kind of excited about that, because I think it's purpose driven, and we're trying to create a creative community that we can, share this information with each other, and everybody wins at, no cost. So
my wife liked your half the house joke. Well, is that, I have it right? The website, creativityincaptivity.fun.
That's right.
Okay.
And my Amanda Rosenberg, my producer, will be very much like it if people check it out, because she's been working really hard behind the scenes. We've got some folks coming up. Stephen Pressfield, who wrote the War of Art, I think is one of his, and also the Artist Journey and some of those. We've got some really, really. Jason Alexander did it. I have this cellist from Atlanta who film scores, and she does live looping with her cello. So I challenged her while we were talking for me to describe scenes and for her to translate them emotionally into underscore that. And she does that 7 or 8 times in the episode, which is like a mini desk concert. It's really amazing. And that's
incredible.
She tells us how she does it while she's doing it. And I didn't give her any advance warning. And yes, Jill, Frank Oz is tomorrow. He drops at midnight Eastern time tonight. So you're in Ohio, you're on Eastern time, right?
Yeah.
So he'll be there for you tomorrow. And he was really great. He really shines a light on the importance of honesty in directing and acting, that if it's not honest, it's got to go. Like, you got to really make it honest for it to survive if he's directing you. So,
wow.
Yeah.
I have one, and I was getting ready to end this, but I have one more quick question. You've done dude, you've done some, I just called you dude, sorry. But you've
by the way, you're the only one. My kids don't even call me dude. I'm just I'm more of a dud to my kids, but
so you've done all of these, like, it's incredible the heights you've reached and some of the things that you've accomplished, and it's amazing to me. Why a podcast? What made you decide, I need to start interviewing these people and doing a podcast?
Well, twofold. I was under the radar all of my life. I mean, I did some things where, I would get credit on a sitcom as a writer or something like that. But mostly what I do, people don't understand. They don't understand that I've been a creative consultant for commercials and movies and television and brand management and, renaming companies and doing all of that. I just do kind of, my clients find me in some odd subversive ways.
Yeah.
And I've done that all my life fairly successfully, but it always comes almost like a side. Somebody goes, hey, I know a guy who can help you with that, right? That seems to have been how my marketing worked. And during the pandemic, all of the normal things that I did went away. Live performance, directing commercials, not writing. Writing didn't go away. And when the venues went away, I thought, you know what? I still have a voice. If I use my voice, and again, this is just another way of taking what you do and making the transfer that's flexible. I'm not a fan of the pivot. When people talk about pivoting, that's that 1 foot in the ground spinning in a circle. But morphing, becoming what be it until you can see it, I believe in, right? I believe in that philosophy that you can learn as you go. And I'm very new with this medium of the podcast medium. But what occurred to me, and this is where I looked at to me, the solution is always baked into the riddle. Yeah. And the riddle was, if I'm not working and the people I work for aren't working, we can't gather production crew, we can't do that, then this is when their time is available. Normally, to get to the chief creative, officer of Pixar is impossible. But I was able to reach him in his home for an hour for a conversation that he was looking forward to, where we weren't talking about the plight of the global pandemic. We were talking about what we love most, which is being creative. So I thought about it. And I also thought, this is a forum for other people in conversation with me to find out what it's like when I consult someone, right? Like we're already having these phone calls. Why not make them public in a way by doing it in this other forum? So I don't care if we get millions of folks. I do care that I have a legacy library with some of the most interesting people in the world that I have had the pleasure of working with in some capacity.
Yeah.
And indirectly in the soft serve version of that, every one of them is a commercial for my skill set. So if I'm talking to a musician or if I'm talking to a writer or director or producer, and we unearth what's it like to write a short story, how do I get my screenplay published? What do I do here? Right? Those are all avenues that I've had to go down for myself. And I always wished that I had a mentor or somebody who would reveal some of these secrets that there's plenty pie for everybody, right?
Yep, there is.
We all approach it differently. So, I guess it's also at a certain age, you're happy to share what you know. And so this has been really, it was something that really gave me something to hang on to, which was making something. When you make something, you birth it into the world, right? And it's something you can have pride in. So I'm just so, I don't know. I guess I thank the pandemic for getting rid of my excuses, right? I no longer have an excuse not to write the book because I was sitting there doing nothing. So I began writing the book and I began to have these conversations. And now our conversation is a result of that. So it's definitely about getting the ball rolling. And anybody that's hesitant, reset your watch to now, right? The time to do stuff is now, not someday, because that, it's just not worth it.
Someday may not come. My wife's gonna take a listen to Pixar Pete Doctor.
She's gonna love it. He's so great, and he's so deserving of his success. He really is and he's a Minnesota guy that has been there since the early days, worked on the Toy Story stuff. And he talks about his love of, he started with flip books, just drawing on Post-it notepads. And literally that's what he did as a kid. And it's the same job, only in a bigger place, right? So what your dreams are today are what you will do in the future. So if you're doing nothing today, you will do nothing in the future, right?
I love it, dude.
Yeah, it's really, I just can't express enough how important it is to believe that what you want to do is possible and to take that step forward, right? Being proactive about it, not expecting somebody to come, and discover you, it's really, it's that when we talk about fear, it's about giving yourself permission to try to do what you want. If you're going to be a singer and you start bad, it doesn't mean you'll always be bad, right? That everybody has a learning curve on anything they do. So I don't know. It's just really, I'm liberated by the idea that there are more things to do and more people. Any songwriter that said, "This is so hard, I can't do it," it's like, write about what you're feeling, because that's what a song is. It's emotions. So if you're frustrated, then let other people. They're gonna relate to it.
Yeah, I agree. And
Jill's my official new publicist. She pulls the tweets. Jill, thank you.
Hey, listen, man, I am unbelievable. First, thank you for the wonderful compliment about our daughter. That was thoughtful and very insightful. So thank you for that. And huge congratulations to you on the new podcast. You may turn me into a podcast listener.
Listen, you don't have to listen to other podcasts, just mine.
I probably won't. Right. I don't even listen to my own. So,
well, listen, it is meant to be your companion. So if you're a person that's working on something else that's passive, or you're doing your art or doing something, it's really, hopefully it's what we consider to be a creative inspiration once a week. And
that's
look,
awesome.
it's always sitting there. So if you miss it for a while and then you come back to it, it's just something to take in. But
every single person watching this or on the replay or on the podcast, if you're listening, go to creativityincaptivity.fun. That's the website. Or just go to your favorite podcast platform and look up Creativity in Captivity and subscribe to it. listen to it and leave a really amazing review. If you have a bad review, keep it to yourself.
No, here's the thing. I
kidding.
say whatever your listening experience is, share it, right?
Share it.
I don't need to buy anybody's review. I want people
That's
to
right.
feel like this is something, there's some take home value here. But Ken, I can't thank you enough for amplifying this project, because it's the little engine that could, right? We just take it a day at a time and a show at a time. Yeah. And I know that you offer a lot of people a chance to promote things and to talk about themselves, but I'm grateful for your believing enough in me and getting behind this, the notion of this. Yeah. And we'll keep moving forward.
I'm honored, man. Very, very honored. So thank you for being on. Stay with me if you would. I'm going to go ahead and end this though. And everybody that shared this out, there are extra points for you somewhere in life if you shared. Don't know where that is exactly, but feel free to share this out. And Pat, thank you so much for coming on and investing your time with us.
Listen, I wish everyone much success in breaking through their own walls and finding, a way to express themselves. Cause I think that's the key. You mentioned your daughter. There's nothing greater than being a father on my resume. That's my top thing. If you remember me for anything, it's about being a good dad, and the rest of it you can have. So cheers to everyone.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. We'll see you later.